Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed last week's show with Kathy Wallace and our discussion about suicide prevention. It was a difficult discussion, but a great one, and I enjoyed it. This week, or today, we have Attorney Mary Walsh Dempsey, we have Attorney Nisha Arora, and we have the Honorable Paul Ware, District Magistrate, the three judicial candidates that are running for Lackawanna County Judge. It'll be a great discussion, a little bit of their background, and I'm looking forward to it. So here we go. So how about just a brief bio on yourself so everyone gets an idea who you are, where you came from?
So I was educated locally. I went to Scranton Prep for high school, and then I went to the University of Scranton, graduated with a degree in criminal justice, and then I headed down 81 to Dickinson School of Law, which is now Penn State. And right when I got out of law school, I went to work full-time. I worked for 20 years with O'Malley and Langen in downtown Scranton, where I represented thousands of clients and did a wide variety of cases. And then I did some time over at the district attorney's office, where I switched to criminal law for a little period of time, and I enjoyed that greatly. And then I ended up where I am now, which is Offberg and Associates, and I deal with businesses and clients each and every day, helping them and assisting them, and honestly, mostly going to court.
Okay. So what made you want to do this? That's what I'd like to know.
Be a lawyer?
No, to run for judge.
Oh, to run for judge.
Yeah.
So this was a very organic process for me. I know some people will say I always wanted to be one. That really wasn't the case for me. I didn't wake up, when I was 5 years old and say I'm going to be a judge. During the course of my career, because I had handled both sides of the law, both plaintiff and defense, and because I had done both civil and criminal law, a lot of my colleagues started to turn to me to help mediate and arbitrate their cases, which is a very, very high compliment. And especially with some of the arbitrations, they're basically putting you in the role of a judge. You're the arbitrator,
Right.
and you're signing on to the decision, and in some cases, it's final. So they have to pick someone, obviously, who they trust and who they know knows the law and who knows the rules of evidence. So that was starting to happen more and more. And then the federal court in Scranton also appointed me a certified mediator, which they do to lawyers in this area who have, experience in court and, again, work with the rules of evidence. And they only pick a smaller group of people that they trust to do that. And basically, a judge at any time can send a case to me, and it will be up to me to help the parties resolve it through the mediation process. Yeah. So in addition to those couple things, a lot of my colleagues were starting to say to me, you should think of being a judge. You should start, planning on a run for judge. And slowly but surely, as these things started to happen over the years, I started to think, this is a career I really can see myself doing. It's a nice natural extension of my career as a lawyer, which I've been doing for 30 full years right now. And I really started to make a plan, but I always had to make sure in my personal life that the timing was right. Yeah. So I let a couple times come and go, and I just kept watching. Yeah. And then I really felt like the time was right due to my age. My children are a little bit older, and because of the experience I have. Well,
and timing is everything. And, I didn't wake up one day. I did wake up one day and decide, well, I think I might run for commissioner. So, I had my reasons, but not something that I planned for a long time.
Right.
And now I have, my kids are older. My daughter's 17. So when I debate her, I think she should be a lawyer. So we'll see how that goes. What qualities do you think are most important for judge?
That's a great question. So my own personal opinion, intellect. I think you need someone who's intelligent. Without that, I think the rest goes downhill. So intelligence to me is number one. I think a work ethic. I've always had a tremendous work ethic. I think you need to be someone who's, a listener and someone who's willing to listen and to assess credibility to some extent. But, there's cases that I think will call for empathy. And I think there's cases that call for you to be tenacious, and you have to really draw that fine line to know, which case are you going to play, hard and firm and resolute, and which case are you going to say, maybe this is a case of a second chance and you're not quite sure. So I think all of those go into making a good jurist, and there's probably 1,000 more, but in terms of the number,
Well, common sense plays a lot.
Common sense.
Common sense, if you have some common sense, you can get through life no matter what.
I agree.
And that's kind of how I'm not the smartest guy in town, but I think I have a little bit of common sense. But same kind of question, like, what's the ideal judge? I don't know. Is that
I'm assuming, yeah. I mean,
same,
quite
I guess.
frankly, I've had the benefit to appear, I think, in front of all of our judges on the county bench and our judges on the federal bench. And truthfully, we are blessed with a great group of judges. That having been said, there's a quote that someone is a lawyer's judge, and that's because they've kind of come up through the ranks and they understand what it's like to be on the other side, and they kind of understand what it's like to be, in the trenches as an attorney, as a trial lawyer. So I think, again, you're right, it is a similar question. It's someone who's willing to look down on the parties in front of them, whether it be the litigants or whether it be the clients, and just you're almost putting yourself in their shoes for a short period of time. You're listening to the plaintiff, and then you're listening to the defense, or you're listening to the prosecution, and you're listening to the defense in a criminal case. And, also you have to be ready to make the hard decisions. I mean, to me, that's probably, again, the trait I should have mentioned before. And that's something I'm truly not afraid of at all. I've been doing it for 30 years, to be quite frank with you. I'm also someone who can make very objective decisions, based on what's placed in front of me. During my time on city council, just to go back to that real quick, there was so much paperwork. The paperwork was unreal, but all of it needed to be looked at, all of it needed to be assessed, and all of it needed to be, taken into account to make an objective decision.
So that was when you were on Scranton City Council.
Yes.
So how did that all start? How did you get involved in that?
That was super interesting. Again, going back to our statement, timing is everything in life. For the year before that, I had been appearing in front of the zoning board on a somewhat regular basis for a case that I was handling pro bono for my neighborhood group. And because of that, I think it was being televised. People were starting to get to know me and kind of liked what they saw in terms of, my passionate advocacy style. So when that came up, I was thinking about it and throwing it around. And then I finally said, I'm going to send in the letter. What can happen? Either I can get it or I cannot get it. So I sent in the letter. There was 9 applicants. We all had to go for an interview. Didn't call anyone, didn't ask for any special treatment. Again, if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. And then I was selected, which I was thrilled for. And to this day, it was one of the best 5 or 6 months of my life. If I wasn't in a couple of the roles I'm in now, I'd love to get back on Scranton City Council. So it kind of, again, just came about organically because of things I had done in the past.
What did you like most about it, being on council?
I think what I liked most was dealing with the citizens and the residents that came to meetings, because you really could look at, very similar, I'm sure, to being a commissioner.
Yep.
You could look them in the eye, and to the best of your knowledge, you could say, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. Now, sometimes you're more successful than you are than others, things you have control over and things you don't have control over. But I really did take it home with me at night. I'd make the calls. A couple people at City Hall said that, they never received more calls than they did at the time I was on council, because I really tried to do my best to make sure everyone, at least during the period of time that I was there, was, taken care of. If I could help them with a resolution or some sort of diplomatic approach to an issue. But I just thought that was, you actually saw the benefits of what you were doing.
Well, and I felt I did this before COVID, obviously, is what I'm referring to, but I did the same thing going. I always got to the meeting early. I like to walk around, talk to everybody. Some of them wanted, they had reasons to be there. They weren't happy, but you know what? I talked to them, and after the meeting, I would stay and also, finish the conversation, or how can I help, or bring them up to my office if we needed to, whatever. So, no, that's all good. You mentioned pro bono. Now, what other? Have you done a lot of that?
I have, actually. So Lackawanna County, through our bar association, and that was established decades ago, Lackawanna Pro Bono, and our president judge here makes a recommendation that most, if you can, attorneys, he asks us to participate in that. So I got involved with it years ago, and again, talk about things that you're just so you're so happy to be able to help certain people. We really don't do criminal law through that, but again, if a citizen meets a certain income threshold, they can go to pro bono, and then they will try and assign an attorney who best meets your, whatever type of case you're going to have. So I've been trying to do that. I'm going to guess that's about 8 to 10 years. It may be a little longer, it may be a little shorter, but they're so happy to have the help, because in many cases, you were their last call. They called around. A lot of lawyers quoted them a fee. A lot of lawyers, said, I'll do it for a certain amount of money. And then when they actually see they're going to get, a good lawyer who's going to take this case for free, they're thrilled. It's so satisfying.
I would think. So of cases, you have one that, or anything that really sticks out that you're most proud of in your career?
I've had a couple interesting ones because, again, having done both civil and criminal litigation, and in the civil world, I've done so many different types. But while I worked for O'Malley and Lang, and I don't know if you'll remember this, I'm going to say it was about a little over 10 years ago, bath salts were a problem everywhere, but locally we were starting to have a huge problem with them. And we were hearing from some of our trial lawyer groups across the country that civil lawyers were getting involved and going to court to try and get injunctions, preliminary injunctions, which are not granted very often, to be candid with you. You have to show that there could be irreparable harm is historically the burden of proof. And so at the time, Andy Jarbola was the district attorney. And so our firm called over to ask District Attorney Jarbola, is this something he'd be interested in? And he had said the Scranton police were trying to figure out the same problem because young kids were dying is what was happening. It was really, really horrible to see. And what we did is we went to court. I believe it was in front of Judge Tom Munley, if I'm not mistaken. And we were successful with District Attorney Jarbola, now Judge Jarbola, in getting a preliminary injunction to stop the sale of bath salts locally.
Right.
So,
I do remember that.
So we were thrilled to be able to do that. I mean, I have tons and tons of cases I could talk about, but I really think, people don't think sometimes of lawyers as doing things like that. They think, your motor accident cases or you're writing a will, but we're really able to accomplish a lot of good as well.
Well, I remember that just from the EMS side of my side of things.
Oh, yeah.
So here's just a question. In the courtroom, if you became aware of unethical conduct on part of a trial case you were presiding over, and how would you handle, do you believe that should be required to report attorney misconduct, things like that?
So I'm going to give a little bit of a disclaimer, and then I do believe I can answer that. Once we're a declared judicial candidate, we're governed by the judicial canons, which basically say there are certain things I cannot opine on because if elected, if a certain case comes in front of me, I have to be independent and impartial at all times, and I have to be able to look at the facts and apply the law. That having been said, I think the question you're asking me is innocent enough in terms of what I think. I've seen this done, to be quite frank with you, and I agreed with it at the time. Judges can do a couple things depending on the severity. In federal court, a lot of times they'll impose sanctions. And there's sanctions against the lawyers, not against the client, and the lawyer has to pay the sanction. So that's in federal court. You have that option, or you can report them to we're governed by a disciplinary conduct board because we have law licenses. So I think that's the other thing. You have to take a lot of things into account. Number one is this the first time? Was it intentional, or was it a general accident that something happened? And but I think the answer to that is, of course, if it was severe enough, it's something that needs to go to the attorney conduct board.
What do you consider your strongest or greatest strengths? I'm going to keep it easy. I'm not going to ask you your weakness.
Yeah. I am extremely passionate about everything I do. A lot of people, go to law school to be a lawyer. I'm actually one of those people who went to law school to change, to make change, to effectuate change. I am extremely passionate when I advocate for people. I really put my heart and soul into it. And there's a big difference between lawyers who have passion and lawyers who are just doing their job, if that makes sense. So I think that's one of it. And then second of all, I have to go back to that word tenacity. a lot of what lawyers do is we're on opposite sides, and you just have to keep plugging along. Some cases I've had have lasted 5 to 10 years. I've done some class action litigation. It takes a long time to work through a class action litigation. It's very, very complex, and you just have to and respectful. I think that's so important these days. And honestly, I don't know if you see it in your career or not. The loss of respect throughout. When I first started practicing 30 years ago, things were so different. Of course, we didn't have email then either. But I would know your family. I would know your kids' names because we talked on the phone so often. And it seems to me like a little bit of that has dissipated over the years. And I am tremendously respectful, even if it's, a lawyer who you're arguably not getting along with so well in the terms of your case. I just always try and remain respectful. And, even when I'm being aggressive or assertive on behalf of a client, I try and remain respectful.
Now, this is just a question I thought of. As a judge, you're sitting there and you're listening to this case, and you start to realize that this person is really being poorly represented, and they have an unprepared or ineffective lawyer. How do you handle something like that? If you're sitting there watching, basically you're watching a train wreck. Is there something that you could do with that, or I don't know? Yeah,
that's a good question, because the truth of the matter is many times that is a contract between the client and the lawyer. And, interfering in that could also be, interference with a contract. And I have actually been in that situation where I did watch that happen to opposing counsel, and I was the one sitting there thinking, what I did, and I didn't do it, but what I thought of doing is we have a group called Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers, and it is an anonymous reporting system. And, a lot of times, unfortunately, it can be due to, addiction, gambling, drugs, alcohol, whatever the issue may be with the lawyer. But most of the time, you're finding that there's an issue behind the poor performance. Not necessarily, sometimes they're unprepared, but a lot of times the issue digs a little deeper. So now, would you do that from the bench? I'm not so sure I would do that from the bench. But as an opposing, lawyer, I'm happy to say I've never had to do that in 30 years. But you're right. It's like watching a train wreck. Yeah, it's alarming.
So we'll get into the end here. What do you think is what sets you apart from the other candidates?
Good question. So I would say number one, experience. We're all coming in with law degrees. We're all lawyers, let's face it. So you look back at the extent and the depth and the diversity of experience. So again, when I was at O'Malley and Langen, civil law arguably, but take into account what type of civil law. I did tons of workers' compensation. I did Social Security disability. I did motor vehicle work. I did product liability work. I did wrongful death litigation. I did class action litigation, which again, not many people have experience with, and it's just not many people do it, to be quite honest with you. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So it's funny. I think I'm going to have at least 10 years more experience on anyone else running. And what I say to people when I say that is think about what happens in your life every single day, and then take that over 10 years. So that's one thing, is the depth and the variety of experience. I've practiced both civil and criminal law, which is, I think, extremely important coming into the bench. I've litigated cases, which means tried cases in both state and federal court. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be the only person who can say that. I'm also, again, have tried civil cases to verdict and criminal cases to verdict. So, you don't find too many people who have the, number one, the experience in both, but number two, the experience of having tried the case to verdict as well. So again, I think it's depth of experience, it's diversity of experience, it's length of time. And, I like to say, and I'm not great at bragging about myself, but I'm, well respected in this legal community based on the time and who I represented and the number of attorneys who I've dealt with over the years. Just last year, as a matter of fact, I was elected by my peers to be the president of the Lackawanna Bar Association. And, I'm not one for titles, to be honest with you. I'm really actually humble, but that was important to me for a couple of reasons. Number one, to be elected by your peers. I think that says so much. I was just thrilled. That was almost one of the most important things to me, that my peers would think so highly of me to lead that organization. And then number two, I was only the 6th female in the 130-year history of that organization. So I was proud of that as well, to be candid with you. So those are some of the things that I think, set me apart.
Okay. Well, that you pretty much answered my last question, but why should voters support you over the other two?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did, but, we can just to go back over it again. I think if anyone looks back at my career, they're going to see, it's important to me that I've worked full time for 30 years. Now, of course, you take your vacations and your sick days,
Well,
but
of course.
yeah, right, like everyone else. But I've had everyday, all day experiences with the law, and it's really all I know, and it's really all I do. Yeah. And again, I've dealt with most of the lawyers, I've dealt with the judges, I've dealt with the court system, and I think when they look at me, or hopefully they'll hear this, and they'll say, boy, she is intelligent. Boy, she is articulate. Boy, I do think she'll make reasonable, rational, objective decisions based on the evidence that's put in front of her.
Okay. Well, I can tell you I really appreciate you coming on.
You.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Chris.
And is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and good luck. And
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for coming in today. Appreciate this.
Thanks.
And,
First of all, let me say thank you, Chris, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my campaign and what we're doing to trying to become a judge in the Court of Common Pleas.
Well, you're welcome, and I do. I appreciate it. And this is just get some basic information out, let people, not everybody knows who everybody is. So first, let's make it very simple. Just tell us about yourself.
Certainly. Well, born and raised in Scranton, spent my whole life in Lackawanna County. I attended West Scranton High School, graduated quite some years ago. And after West Scranton High School, I attended the University of Scranton. I graduated from the University of Scranton, and then after some discussion with family members, I decided to go to law school. So I went to Widener University School of Law, and once I graduated from there, I went to work in the Lackawanna County District Attorney's Office, where I cut my teeth trying criminal cases, prosecuting offenders, that sort of thing. And about 9 years after that, I ran for the first time in 2011 for magistrate in North Scranton and Dunmore. I was successful, elected on the Democratic and the Republican ticket, and ran for re-election in 2017 and was unopposed on both.
Okay.
And that brings us to where we are today.
Running. That's nice. But what was your reason for wanting to run for judge now,
Well,
for Lackawanna County?
This has been in the works for quite some time, particularly going back to 2017 when I was unopposed for magistrate. And I was advised that, even though you're unopposed for magistrate, you're still down the road. You have a dream, you have an aspiration to become a judge. So now you're running for judge. So I went out and just let everybody know that was my desire. That was what the goals were, what the plans were at that time. But I want to run for judge because I really enjoy doing what I'm doing as a magistrate, and I think I would make a wonderful addition to the bench in Lackawanna County.
What, in your opinion, what are the most important qualities for a judge, and describe maybe the ideal judge, if there's such a thing?
Well, there's no such thing as the perfect judge. Otherwise, no one would be qualified.
That guy died on the cross.
Right. But the best you can be on the bench is a person that's going to listen to both sides. And when I say listen to both sides, I was advised a long time ago that most people just want to be heard. Don't have to agree with them, but you listen to them. And as long as you give them the courtesy and the respect of listening to them, most things go well in the courtroom. So as a judge, you need to make sure that you listen to all sides. You don't make any determinations beforehand until you've heard all the evidence or that sort of thing. So my judicial temperament, my ability to empathize with those people that come before me, because a lot of times when people come before you, they're at the end of their rope. This is it. This is the last straw. Brought them to court, which most people don't want to be there in the first place.
No.
But if they're there, you want to make sure that you pay attention to why they're there. And that's what it takes to be a good judge. You make sure you're paying attention to the reasons that people are in court in the first place.
And I've found that there's a couple ways that people listen that I've seen. People listen to respond, and people listen to really learn what they're listening to. So just to respond isn't the right way to do things. So
never is.
Well, now your experience. I know you're a district magistrate, but what skills do you bring to the position?
Well, I'm most proud of my work ethic, because when I was younger, in college, I worked at United Parcel Service for 16 years. In fact, I started there as a part-time employee, a member of the Teamsters Union, loading and unloading packages. Graduated through the ranks and became a sales manager at United Parcel Service. And while I was doing that, I attended Widener University School of Law. So I worked a full day at UPS, got in the car after work, drove to Harrisburg 3 nights a week for 4 years to complete law school. And it's that type of work ethic and dedication that I'm going to bring to the bench.
That's not easy.
It's not easy at all. The ride was so horrible that made law school seem a little bit easier than most.
Yeah.
So we did that, made a couple great friends going back and forth to law school, learned a tremendous amount, but I also learned that when you put your mind to something, pretty much can accomplish whatever you want.
I remember, running for commissioner. I started early, 3.5 years before. And I worked every day, and I did this stuff at night, weekends, every minute. It takes a lot, but if you're driven and you have the desire, you can usually do what you want to do.
That's correct.
What was one of the maybe a case or 2 cases that you're most proud of in your career?
Well, the different phases of my career. One of the cases I'm proudest of, or one of the things I'm proudest of, are the prosecutions or the criminal trials. And I did dozens of them in the district attorney's office. And I was looking out for all of the citizens of Lackawanna County when we were trying cases and going out there chasing the bad guy, making sure that those that committed offenses were brought to justice. So I was quite proud of my work there, particularly because I did a little bit of everything. I was assigned to the 11 counties of Northeast Pennsylvania for the Insurance Fraud and Auto Theft Task Force. Also prosecuted a number of drug offenses through the drug unit, and then the other offenses as well, the assaults and that sort of thing. So I got to see a lot of what was going on in Lackawanna County, and unfortunately, you see the criminal side. That was part of the job. And as a UPSer, we never really knew it existed because you only knew what you read in the paper.
Right.
And then once I went to work in the district attorney's office, I got to see it on a daily basis. So it's kind of like a Superman thing. I was doing good every day, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So that brought me a lot of pride, a lot of satisfaction in my work, and I love the people that I worked with there as well, and they were quite helpful in my run for magistrate. Some of the other cases that I'm proudest of are those individuals that found themselves in court, but they really weren't bad people. These were people that suffered from addiction problems. These were people that suffered from mental health issues, and we were able to address those issues by directing them down the correct path, meaning you get treatment, you go through rehab, you do the things that you're supposed to do to make yourself productive again, rather than just incarcerate people. And you know better than most that it costs a lot of money to incarcerate people.
Yes, it does.
And compliance and good behavior is really the outcome we're looking for. And if we can do that by treating them differently, not just incarcerating them, I think that's a home run for everybody. So I'm kind of proud of the work that we do here in Lackawanna County, and I've been a part of that as a magistrate for the last 10 years.
Yeah. And I know that was a big part of Judge Barace's, the treatment court that he's got. I mean, it's nationally recognized.
Certainly.
And I'm a part of it, and I'm always impressed to go to the graduations and to see these folks actually get turned around. So
certainly, and they encourage that through all the judges in the common pleas and all the magistrates as well.
Yep. Oh, it's a great thing. We'll switch gears. How about during your career, have you been involved in much of pro bono type?
Well, I didn't have the opportunity because, as much as most people do, because I went right to work in the district attorney's office as soon as I graduated. So my focus was on criminal law at the time. So pro bono typically defends criminals in the criminal justice system. And I was on the other side, so I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And when I took the bench, I can't represent anybody in front of a magistrate. So it limited my opportunities for pro bono. Do I do pro bono work? Yes. I try and help those individuals out in things other than that would have to appear before a magistrate. Family law, divorces, wills, stuff like that.
Oh, I'm sure you get a lot of calls.
Yes.
I'm sure of that. Plus the ones when you're out.
Sure.
Can I talk to you for 1 second?
Everybody has a question, and that's okay.
Well, that's all good. It's nice that people are accessible. I try to be every day, and I know you do too.
Sure.
So, what sets you apart from the other candidates that are out there now, and also second part of that is what do you consider your greatest strengths? I won't ask you about weaknesses. I don't think that's right.
Well, what sets me apart is one of my greatest strengths, and that's my work ethic. And I already told you about driving back and forth to Harrisburg 3 nights a week for 4 years while I worked a full-time job. But that in and of itself isn't enough. We also had to find time for participation in community service activities. I worked as the treasurer for the Greenridge Little League for years while my children were progressing through the Greenridge Little League. And that felt like a job sometimes. But we do things like that because that's what we're supposed to do as parents and as good neighbors and that sort of thing. But my work ethic, my determination, and my drive to do things and do them well. I'll tell you a little bit about not only my work ethic from when I was younger, but now. My magistrate's office is one of the largest in the county. We handle roughly 4,000 cases a year. And that ranges from traffic, which of course you know what that is, stop signs, speeding, that sort of thing. Non-traffic citations, which are harassment, disorderly conduct, code violations, that sort of thing. Civil cases, landlord-tenant cases. So we've heard the range of just about everything in the court, and we handle them all, and we handle them well, and we handle them in a timely fashion. So I'm proudest of the fact of what we're able to accomplish in the magistrate's office, and I hope to bring that to the Court of Common Pleas. That's the type of work ethic you're going to get. The other important thing that differentiates me from everybody else, those 4,000 cases a year, I'm 10 years on the bench. Simple math will tell you it's around 40,000 cases that have been processed through my office. That experience is second to none regarding the candidates running for judge. So when I moved from the magisterial bench to the Court of Common Pleas, there's really not a learning curve. I've already been there, done that, and I'm going to bring that experience to the court. And that's what sets me apart from anybody else that wants to run for judge.
I have another question here. I'm asking everybody, just because it was just a question that I had. And if in the courtroom, if you become aware of unethical conduct on the part of a trial advocate, how do you handle that? And should the judges report attorneys' misconduct?
Well, with every career, there are people that do it well, and there are people that obviously make mistakes or errors of judgment or something along those lines. But first and foremost, we should police our own. We want to make sure that those people that are appearing in court are getting vigorous advocacy by whomever it is. And if I believe that a lawyer is not being a vigorous advocate, and I don't have to agree with them, but if he's not doing his job and doing it well, or he's doing something wrong, you pull him aside and you talk to him. Give them the opportunity to express themselves, explain what's going on, because it might be something that you don't recognize, okay? And you'll never know unless you ask, because you never know what someone else is going through unless you ask them, okay? And firemen have bad days, and police officers have bad days, lawyers have bad days, doctors have bad days. Doesn't mean that their career should be over or they should change into something else, but we need to address the source of the problem rather than taking it out on their clients. So I would talk to the individual first, and if we couldn't address the issue with the help through the courts, then disciplinary action is appropriate.
Now, in the same token, if you're in the courtroom and you're witnessing, the client has a unprepared or ineffective lawyer, I mean, if you're sitting there watching a disaster starting to happen, I mean, how do you handle something like that?
That's happened. And again, some days are better than others for people. But every judge, every lawyer should do their best to make sure that those people that appear in front of them have effective representation. If, like you said, it's a train wreck, what I have done in the past is I've stopped the proceedings, continued the hearing, allowed them to regroup themselves, do what needs to be done to address whatever issues they have, and then come back 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and then continue with the hearing. And again, that's only because that's fair. Everybody deserves to be represented well.
And I've said this many times, it's just common sense.
That's correct. And that's really what makes the difference on the bench, common sense.
So the big question, why should the voters here in Lackawanna County support you over your opponent?
I'm going to tell you why they should support me. I've demonstrated my work ethic. It's not something that I have to manufacture or make up or anything like that. Done that since I was a little kid in my first paper route when I was 12 years old. Held a job from then until now. But I've loved every job I've ever done. And it's not because they were the best jobs in the world. It's because I enjoyed doing what I did. Always enjoyed going out, working my hardest, being productive, and I was proud of whatever the results were. And it didn't matter, like I said, if it was delivering the Scranton Tribune back in the day, when there was a Scranton Tribune, to working at the local grocery store and working at United Parcel Service at night, loading and unloading trucks, to becoming a district attorney and a magistrate and hopefully judge. So I enjoy what I do. I think I've been quite good at what I do. My track record speaks for itself, particularly my track record on the bench, because we have processed those approximate 40,000 cases. And usually when you hear about lawyers and judges in the news, it's usually bad news. So you haven't heard much about me because there's probably not a lot of bad news to talk about. And that's saying something, particularly because if you think about it, 40,000 cases. Of those 40,000 cases, if you came to a hearing, more often than not, somebody left unhappy. Because they came out on the wrong side. But I gave them the courtesy of listening to what they had to say, a thoughtful deliberation, and a discussion with them of why I've decided the way I decided. So there haven't been many people that came away feeling like they were slighted or they didn't have their day in court. And I bring that experience and 40,000 cases, as well as my trial experience in the district attorney's office, to the bench. And it's a trial court position. That's what it should be. So that's why I think I'm most qualified.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, yes.
Good.
I want to make sure that everybody understands that service isn't just something that we talk about. I've been fortunate enough to have been doing it since I was young. Went to work in the district attorney's office, prosecuting cases, enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a public servant, and I was trained well in the district attorney's office. I was given the opportunity to grow, and I took advantage of it. The same thing goes with the rest of my family. It's not an accident, at least I don't think it is, that I'm the proud father of 4, grandfather of 1, and it's not an accident that the majority of my children serve. My oldest is married and lives in Annapolis, Maryland, and her husband is a JAG at Fort Meade in Baltimore. My youngest daughter is also married to a military man, and they live in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And my son is graduate last May of the United States Naval Academy. He's an aerospace engineer serving our country out in San Diego, California. And it's hard for me not to think that maybe we did something right. Maybe they were parented well, they were raised well, and now they're off and doing their thing, making sure that they're serving as well. So it's not something that we just talk about. It's not something that's political. It's just the way I was raised.
Well, and I agree with you. I have same thing, 4 and a grandson. And I have a civil engineer. I have a son that's the president of his class in medical school, becoming an eye doctor. And I have a daughter that's 17 that we'll see.
Well, that's our legacy. We can do whatever we do, and we can do it to the best of our ability. But our legacy is really what we leave behind, and it's our children.
Well, it's all good stuff.
Yes, it is.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And good luck in the future. And I know I'll see you around town.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate your time as well.
You're welcome.
You have a great day and stay safe.
You too. Thank
all
you
right,
very much.
Thank you.
Nisha.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
Good, very happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here today. So tell us about yourself, how you got started, where you came from, the whole 9 yards.
Well, I am born and brought up in Lackawanna County. I was born at Mercy Hospital in Scranton.
Oh, you're going all the way back.
All the way back.
Okay.
So I grew up in Clark Summit. I went to Scranton Prep, and then I left to go to college at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and I majored in government there. Always thought about working on campaigns and doing something political, but ultimately decided to go straight to law school after college. And I moved back to Pennsylvania, went to Villanova University School of Law, and then I wanted to do something different and maybe work in a European law firm or do something international. So I moved to England, to London, and I got my master's, my LLM in international business law and arbitration.
Wow.
And then I ended up coming back home in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah. And ended up starting a clerkship at the Court of Common Pleas for Michael Jude Borace. And I was there for about 3 years at the courthouse, which was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I moved on, as all law clerks have to do. You have to move on and leave that great job where you have lots of fun. And I became, joined a family law practice in Dunmore. So I was a family law attorney for almost 5 years. And then I joined ERA, One Source Realty, which is our family real estate business. My mother's a broker and owner. And I do a lot of stuff there besides just being the general counsel.
Yeah. Well, I came from a family business too. You do
Yes.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it goes.
You have to be the plumber. You have to be the bill payer, payroll, everything.
You got
right?
that right. Yep. What was the reason you wanted to shot at running for judge?
I saw a lot of people buy houses this summer. A lot of people came from out of the area to Lackawanna County, to whether they were escaping the pandemic, whether the pandemic pushed them to kind of go move to a place which had more space, better schools, a different life for their families. And a lot of these families who moved here were minority families. And I saw literally in 1 year the demographics of this area change.
Mm-hmm.
They have been changing, but I spoke to a reporter from the New York Times this summer who was writing an article about the changing demographics of Joe Biden's hometown. And it kind of got me thinking that we don't have a lot of diversity representation in our public offices, the bench included. So it would be nice if someone, took a shot at it and ran. And I kept thinking, who would be good? Who would be good? Who would be good? And there's not actually that many minority attorneys or people from a minority background who are even qualified to run for judge. And then I basically looked in the mirror and said, wow, it's got to be you.
Yeah.
You have to try. So that's how it happened.
Well, I was having a conversation a bunch of years ago, and there was things going on here in the county, and I said to a good friend of mine, I said, isn't there somebody out there that, could be a little more professional and do the right things and do the job?
Yep.
Isn't there anybody? And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I know somebody. And I said, well, who? He said, you. That's how I started thinking about it. So enough of that. What qualities are most important for a judge, and describe maybe an ideal judge, if there's such a thing?
I think the most important quality that a judge needs to have is to be human, because ultimately your decision is affecting a human being, their life, their family, whether that be good or bad. So whether you're hearing a criminal trial or you have a criminal defendant before you, or whether it's a civil trial, there are winners and losers every day in your courtroom. And you need to come and deliver those decisions to those people with a sense of humanity, because you're changing their lives no matter what. And then I think the second most important quality is integrity, because delivering those decisions is going to be hard. There are going to be days that you have to deliver a jury verdict that you don't agree with, but that's the way the jury ruled. There are going to be cases where there's no clear right and wrong, or there is a clear right and wrong, but there are people, this is a small town, everybody knows everybody. Delivering those decisions and making those rulings is going to be hard. It is hard. And obviously, I think you have to be intelligent, because being a judge is not just sitting up on the bench in a robe. You have to know the law. If you don't know the law, you have to research the law. You have to understand the law. You have to apply the law, and you have to write legal opinions about the law based upon, precedent, case law, all of these things. So it's not a single most important quality. I think it's a multifaceted set of qualities that make a judge.
Okay. Sounds right to me.
Yeah. Sometimes you also need a healthy dose of common sense, I think, in this world.
Common sense will get you long way in life.
Oh, my dad always says, common sense, not that common.
No, sometimes not. So with your experiences, and so what skills do you bring to the position now? I know you've been involved in in law, but
Well, I worked behind the bench when I was a law clerk. So, as the law clerk, we ran the courtroom, ran the treatment courts, wrote opinions, did all of those things. So I understand the day-to-day process of that. Obviously, then as a litigator, I was on the other side of the bench before the judges. So I understand the process of what attorneys do in a courtroom, which is, very different than a transactional attorney does in an office, because obviously there's procedures, you have to think on your feet, because there's no, hold on, let me check the answer to that. When you're faced with an objection or cross-examination, you that's it, you got to go. And then running a company, talk about common sense. Like, you really need common sense to manage a company, and you need life experience. And, I'm managing over 100 different personalities on any given day. So that is basically a quality that I think you can't get that unless you work, in the corporate world or in a large private practice. Those are things that you learn on a day-to-day. Things have to go wrong for you to figure out how to fix them. Right. And that ability really has come from the past 5 years of managing a lot of different personalities and being responsible for the lights being on. Right. If I don't go to work, who's going to pay the bills, right?
Right, absolutely. So back to some of your cases. Is there a case or something that you can think of that you're most proud of in your career?
Yes. Yeah, there was a really good one when I was had first started in the family law practice. I was sent to federal court to argue an international custody case. And I was a very green attorney. I had been a law clerk. So being a law clerk, you're kind of in the position where you're under the judge. So you're not responsible for delivering the case. You are just responsible for, writing the legal opinion that comes afterwards and making sure that all the laws are followed for the trial. Going into federal court for this case, it was there's a law, a treaty, where if you remove a child from another country and you bring them to another country who's a member of this treaty, you can bring a case in that country's federal court system to have your child brought back to you. So father had brought a case for his daughter to be returned back to him in the Dominican Republic. And the daughter was in the custody of their grandmother here she was in Hazleton. So she came into the office and said, I need a lawyer. And I was the new attorney. So it was the next day, everyone else's calendars were full. And I was asked if I would go take care of this. And I said, sure, it's just going to be a scheduling order, right? We're just going to get a scheduling order and we're going to come back for a trial, right? And I was, yes, don't worry. The judge isn't going to make you have a trial. Well, I get to the federal courthouse in Wilkes-Barre. And there were three attorneys on the other side with the father, who was the plaintiff in the matter. One of them was a partner at a law firm in Manhattan. The other one was a partner in a law firm in Philadelphia with her assistant, who was the junior attorney. So at this point, I wasn't even probably as qualified as the junior attorney to be there doing this case.
You just entered the big leagues right there.
Yeah, like no choice, no option. And we get in, the judge comes up, all rise, we all stand up, and he goes, let's proceed, call your first witness.
Wow.
And I don't even know, I didn't even have time to freak out about it. I just had to do a trial. Yeah. And we did a 2-day trial, an international custody trial. I can't say I was successful. Okay. So it was not a win, but from losses come learning, right?
Yep. Lessons learned.
Yep.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think the family was reunited. I did follow up with them, and I know that the daughter ended up having a good relationship with her father and spending summers in the Dominican Republic with him, and the school year here with her grandmother.
So it did. It worked out.
Yeah, it worked out ultimately.
Well, good.
But yeah, that was 2 days of true excitement.
That's memorable. I would think you're not going to forget that.
No.
How about Have you ever been involved in any pro bono work during your career?
Yes. And when I was in law school, I volunteered for all 3 years that I was there at the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. So we represented clients, underprivileged clients who basically needed help. It was focused on artists. So it was artists who needed help with landlord-tenant cases, intellectual property cases, things like that. So I did that during law school. I did as much volunteer work as I could do in London when I was there, but it was hard because I wasn't technically qualified under their laws. So some, helping with wills, things like that. And then since I've been back, whenever they call, I do whatever they need.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's good.
I love the pro bono work is important. And we do a lot outside of the legal world too.
Yeah.
So
it's just being part of the community.
yeah, I think it's important. We did a big food drive this summer, and with my fiance, through his company, donated a lot of produce to the Salvation Army and to the other food banks. So the Salvation Army was great. They actually put boxes together with the produce we delivered, and we did kind of produce that would last. So potatoes, onions, carrots, things like that, and some fresh fruit. And they have a list of people who couldn't make it to the store or they knew could use extra help, and they went out with their team and hand delivered each one of those boxes.
Wow.
So that was amazing because
That's nice.
this pandemic's been a tough time
Been a
for
brutal time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not been fun, but I hope I see daylight at the end of this tunnel here.
yeah.
So
And I think the community is so much stronger for having gone through this
I
together.
think so.
Like
I do.
you coming from a small business background too. I mean, you have to see there's all these groups on Facebook for small businesses supporting other small businesses. The drive to go eat local, buy local.
Yep,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's amazing.
So, two-part question, not really, but what do you think sets you apart from the other candidates, and what are some of your greatest strengths, you think? I don't ask anybody their weaknesses. That's not fair. Strengths.
Well, I think what sets me apart from the other candidates is the fact that I have had experience on both sides of the bench. So working in the Court of Common Pleas, like I said, taught me the day-to-day. I'm familiar with the procedures. I'm familiar with the practices. I'm familiar, with citing legal precedent, case law, all that stuff, writing a legal opinion. And then moving beyond the bench, I've been in the shoes of the people who are before the judge, right? So with my clients, I've done custody cases, PFA cases, corporate cases and civil cases, and money judgments are hard for people just the same as a custody trial. But those family law cases really give you an idea of what people are facing when they go in there. And it's a scary day for a lot of people. Like
I would think.
a lot of people say, well, everyone wants their day in court. They want to be, they need to be there. They need to be before the judge. My experiences were not that everyone really wanted to go be before a judge. It's very scary. It's intimidating to a lot of people. And then add to that there is not a lot of diversity on the bench, but a lot of my clients are diverse,
Well, that's a nerve-wracking place. Even when I got sworn in, I was in for a good thing, and I'm in the courtroom, and all the judges are sitting there, and it's still intimidating.
It's intimidating.
Yeah,
and
so
I
can get that.
The courthouse itself, the rooms are big, the benches are tall, there's marble everywhere, and that's not a place where you say, oh, I want to go hang out for a Monday morning down there and sit there in a chair and have questions thrown at me and have to relive all the,
bad things that
have happened.
Yeah, darn right.
So knowing what people are going through when you're there before you in that position, I think is, a benefit that I have that maybe the other two candidates don't have. Maybe that is my strength, is my ability to empathize with all of the attendees in my courtroom. I think another strength is, just my education, my experience. I've basically tried everything, and I have done it for a while. So now it's time. It's time to give back. You know, I have all these things going for me, and if a person like me doesn't take the chance and run for this position, and you know, who else is going to?
That's right.
Right.
So when you become a judge and you're hearing a case and you become aware of some unethical contact on the part of a trial advocate, how do you handle such that kind of a situation? And would you as a judge report attorney misconduct? Well,
as an attorney, you have a duty under the rules of professional conduct to report any attorney misconduct. So I was taught always that those rules are vitally important to follow, because without them, you know, lawyers are just a bunch of hooligans, right? That can do whatever they want.
Whatever they want, I guess.
No, not really. Rules are there for a reason. I think rules protect us. I think rules create structure. I'm a big follower of the rules, so I would have to do what the rules told me to do. Obviously, there's a reason for everything, but you know, where would we be without law and order, right? We saw it. We had an example of that this summer. We saw that. So yeah, I'm a type A personality. I like rules. They need to be enforced. So I would have to do whatever I needed to do.
In another situation, you observed a party in your courtroom being like poorly up. The attorney poorly or very unprepared or being very ineffective. How do you handle something like that? If you see basically a train wreck happening, like what do you?
That's tough. That's tough because I've seen it, and I've seen it as a law clerk, and I've been on. I mean, I don't think I've ever provided terrible representation to a client. I've always been prepared and done, you know, the job. But I've seen opposing counsel just drop the ball. I mean, there's not much you can do. You have a duty to your client at that point to do the best that you can do under the circumstances. Your duty isn't to the opposite client. But as a judge,
if you're witnessing this, I mean, is there anything? I don't know. Is there anything you can do? I don't. Stop and take a break for a minute, maybe?
I mean, yeah, you can decide what to do in your courtroom. You know, you can call attorneys into your chambers for you know, a meeting and talk to them. You have to call them both in together. You can't call one in and not the other. But probably that's the situation I would do, and I'd check on them and say, "Hey, everything okay? Okay, we're you know."
Could just be having a bad day. I don't know. But.
Yeah, everyone has bad days, you know. But unfortunately, when you're in a courtroom, you don't really get the luxury of having a bad day. Yeah. You kind of, you know that from running a business too, right? You don't get to have a bad day. And
people don't care if you're having a bad day.
And with your job now, do you get to have a bad day?
No.
No.
No. People don't really care if I'm having a bad day.
Nope.
So why should the voters support you over your other opponents?
Well, I'm different. Obviously, I'm a new choice. I'm a different choice. I believe that the change I would bring is necessary for this county. I think I could do great things. It's time to diversify the bench. It's time to create a system where everyone in the community, all of Lackawanna County, can feel represented. And that is something that I'm able to provide. And thankfully, I have credentials and intelligence and hopefully a personality to back it all up. So,
okay, great. Last question. Is there anything else you'd like to add that I didn't think of? Or?
Well, I just am so grateful to be doing this. This opportunity has been amazing. It's been a whirlwind. We were late to announce our candidacy, but we're working hard to get everything moving. And if I have social media, a website, Facebook page, and if anybody is interested in meeting me personally, wants to shake my hand, wants to hear my platform, I would love to meet as many people as I can and show them that, you know, I'm your true candidate for change, and I'm genuinely running for this position because I believe I can effectuate that.
Great. Well, I appreciate you taking your time in your busy schedule right now during
yeah.
the campaign, but this is just a way for people to get to know you a little
great.
bit, and I appreciate you coming on. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank our guests, Mary Walsh Dempsey, Nisha Arora, and Paul Ware, District Magistrate. I thought we had some great discussions. There's a little insight on all three candidates. I tried to keep it uniform and fair, all the same questions. So everybody you get to listen to in their own voice. They can tell you, they told you a little bit about themselves, and I think it went well. Next week, we have coming on Dr. Jill Murray from Lackawanna College, and we're going to discuss all things Lackawanna College. I'm looking forward to that. So remember, this is all paid for by the Friends of Chris Chermak. And if you like this episode or any of the other episodes, please feel free to donate to the Friends of Chris Chermak. Reach out to us. I can give you the address. All donations are greatly appreciated. This podcast has been a lot of fun for me, and I'm looking forward to continuing this. So thank you. We'll see you next week.